And also that judgment separates you, not only causes conflict with that divine ego, but it separates you, because it separates you and makes you in variance with it. It's the rebellion of Adam's ego. And there's the appeal, some injustice. That is a juicy little morsel that you come down to puff up on. But you come down to puff up on it. Praise works the same way. If people praise you, that's another trap you can fall into. We'll discuss it later. This is praise. People praise you, approval, not a form of it. You're looking for that will kill you. That will make you a slave. There are people who are good at it, that know how to reward people for. Come back to it later on. Too hard to explain. But the ego puffs up in judgment, and that's called this anger, resentment, hostility thing. That's what it is. It separates you from your inner, converts you to an unfolding, outer unfolding. You start to become transmogrified, which means downwardly transcended. And you tend to identify with a person that you hate. So if I want to control you, if I want to make you my slave, if I'm clever enough and cunning, if I want to make you my slave, if I'm clever enough and cunning enough and mean enough, I can aggravate you, give you those little tidbits of injustices until you get so upset, you feel guilty and will look for my praise. I will give it to you. As long as you do what I want you to do. And you do. And but as long as you're doing what I want you to do for praise, you're damned if you get it. Damned if you don't. Yeah, but the cruelty is either intentional, people are good who know how to aggravate you. It's professionals, professional tyrants. Government is excellent at that. They're professionals. Like, for example, they are cutting down on the hospitals. The cab driver told me this last night. He said, they're daft, aren't they? This last night. He said, they're daft, aren't they? He said they're cutting down the healthcare and cutting down on the services, but they appoint new administrators. So it does seem insane, doesn't it? It does seem insane, doesn't it? It does seem absurd, but see, those in power will deal in absurdities. Because like Hitler said, if you hold a big enough absurdity or a lie, people will respond and believe it. If you hold an absurdity, people will respond and believe it. If you hold an absurdity up with your authority, if you've got the authority to do it, and you hold the absurdity up as a normalcy, and you have the power to do what the cab driver just described, it will upset you, and eventually you accept it. What can you do? You know, everybody's. It's all designed. Yeah, you can see if you read the papers, if you listen to the BBC, they're totally calm and debonair and sophisticated. Totally absurd. A lot of absurdity. Yes, absurdity. Yes, absurdity. And then they feign love and affection and compassion for the people who drive to drugs and drink. You see them going after them, being compassionate and understanding, driving them, like a mother who turns a child into a schizophrenic. And the mother is the cause of the schizophrenic in this particular example that I'm making. Dads could do it too. But she's the nurturer, so she's the one most prominent, so I can talk about her best. So she's the one that's driven the child through absurdity, but she seems perfectly normal. They have to have the ability to unglue you. Because you see the insanity, because you're privy to it. You live with the person. Nobody else sees it. She puts on the face for everybody else. So she looks like the concerned mother. And everybody is compassionate. You know, poor mother, she worked so hard, she's been such a good mother. She worked so hard, she's been such a good mother. And look, this poor guy's nutty as a fruitcake. We must try to help her. And so she chases him, trying to help him. And then you get all those other mothers, excuse me putting it that way, in the hospital, in the jail, trying to have compassion on him, trying to help him. Those people in the jail and hospital are more intelligent than the psychiatrists and the jailers. They see through the hypocrisy. But the jailers and the mothers and the doctors with their little white coats on, you see, there's nothing worse than living in a hell where you're the one that's saying that the guys they're crazy. But you're trapped in the worst that you get. Who understands what I'm talking about? Yeah.
I was systematic back at a back. 11, 12, 13.
Yeah.
Physically very I've been in that living hell. I've been in that living hell. When I was 10 to 15. And always getting knocked around the head. Let's go back to the 50s. So I've been there. Like I said about my father, I forgave my father.
Yeah.
I was hated for it.
Yeah.
I was hated for it. Because of the way my father treated me as if I had to strangle him. But I didn't, I forgave him. And I got hated.
Yeah.
So the people, a year later, I listened to the Roy Mercer show. And you stopped recording me.
So you knew it before I told it to you. I confirmed what you already knew. And that was like, my God, thank God someone said it. Yeah.
My hair stood on it.
That's it. It's confirmed. See, what I'm trying to do is confirm everything you already know. Don't buy it unless you already know it. Because if you buy it and you don't know it, you're going to be just as screwed up by me as you would by anyone else. You see? So the forgiveness thing, now I just want to finish that. You keep bringing me back to that forgiveness principle. The forgiveness is an ego, fallen for the tidbit of injustice, puffing up. Fallen for the tidbit of injustice, puffing up. And therefore, its identity has been transformed by the sin of judgment. Not only does the sin of judgment, the tidbit is a temptation. Someone's cruelty. People do things off the wall. People do things off the wall purposely, for the most part. You don't know why people are cruelty? You haven't done anything to them? Why do they treat you that way? Look down their nose at you, treat you like a little squirt. Right? You have it everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. On all sides. See? And you mustn't be victimized. But if you have been, what happens to you, just from that stress and the emotional reaction, you're connected to their mind. You are beginning to take shape from their will. You become like what you hate. See? And then things go wrong in your life because you're translating hell on earth. You're no longer putting a heaven in this earth. You're putting a hell on earth. It's coming through you like it came through them. And then you hate them for it as if it was their fault. No, it's your fault. There's something you have to learn about this unforgiveness thing. For a while, once you fall to that, no one can talk to you about it. No one can talk truth because you'll be as resistant to the truth as you try to speak up to your dad. Hey, Dad, you know why you're doing this? Shut up! Bang! Right? Isn't that right? You can't tell them anything. You can't tell anybody anything. You have to suffer being them. But see, so the unforgiveness addicts you to the process of looking for things to judge. Because once you start to judge, be angry, you start to become different. You start to become formed different. You start to become formed out of that temptation. And therefore, what you are is in conflict with what you could be. But now what you are that is in conflict with what you could be is also hates truth. It doesn't want to face the truth about itself. It also hates truth. It doesn't want to face the truth about itself. It doesn't want to admit it because how can God be wrong? So it unconsciously escapes consciousness. and looks to make itself unconscious by looking for more things to judge. So you have a consciousness of you being right, but as you more consciousness of being right because you found something wrong to judge, you're actually becoming more wrong. You've got more conflict. And so throughout your life, you're actually getting worse. Every time you feel better and you puff up and you feel superior by judging, you're actually deteriorating things in the present. So the past is always repeating itself in the present and reinforcing itself in the present. Now in the present, you can also be in the present. You can stand back and you can look at, say, oh my God, what am I doing? Then you can see how your hate and unforgiveness is causing a judgment on you. Every judgment is a judgment on you. And Jesus said it right. He said, if you don't forgive people their sins, the Father in heaven won't forgive you. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Exactly. That is the root of Christianity. Do you think Christians understand it? They pray on Sundays and pray on each other on Mondays. Is that right? No, that's not to say Christianity is wrong. You don't judge Moses by Jews, or you don't judge Muhammad by Muslims. You don't judge Christ by Christians either, because what word am I looking for? They've made it academic. They've legitimized or legalized something that's spiritual. See? So that becomes education now. Yeah, they think they're righteous because you belong to a church. And you usually have a preacher up on a pedestal and he becomes the Jesus. And he can't save you. But he tries because everybody expects him to save them. And that's what he gets paid for. All they're doing is saving them from seeing how rotten they are. Paid for. All they're doing is saving them from seeing how rotten they are. That's all he can do. Pardon? Well, I didn't say you didn't. But they don't. If we had more good judges and good teachers and more good everything and good ministers, this country wouldn't be such a mess. They'd be everything and good ministers. This country wouldn't be such a mess. They'd be standing up and saying the things I'm saying on the BBC if they'd let them. Now, there's not enough of them. And if there is, they don't have enough courage to say it. I saw in the paper the other day that a woman stood up for herself, and she spread some leaflets all over town because she was unjustly treated, and so they put her before the magistrate, and she got fined £75 for insulting behavior. Well, I better be careful if I'm going to go on the radio here, because I'm
program, about the doctor's side of things. I'm very lucky because my GP, I had a real problem last October going into that, and he got a little note, and I read this little note. It was for a psychologist I had to see, and if you could please see my patient who was grief-stricken. It was just called grief. Understand? And so on that score, I was very fortunate to have a GP.
Yeah, but you didn't have to go to school to know that you were grief-stricken. No, the dog could tell you that.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. But he used to never give me a...
Probably.
He used to never give me a tablets, see?
And of course, another person, not you, would feel that the doctor was in sympathy with him when he wrote the prescription. This poor fellow is grief-stricken, give him a whole bunch of... In other words, immediately such a patient that if it wasn't towards their problem than you did, the smallest clue awakens you. You're looking for the smallest little clue. Boing, you start to think. The average person doesn't react to that kind of prescription. The average person doesn't react. No. You wouldn't have noticed it. You wouldn't have noticed it. He just felt like it was more sympathy that he would have just felt like, oh, this doctor's giving me lots of sympathy. Thank you, doctor. You make me feel so good. Well, the lady back there. Yes. Yes. Right. No, I don't think anybody's stupid. That's right. When I was a little boy, I had the strangest... I hope you can hear everything okay. Can you hear them across there? Snapper. I was, the thoughts come to you, like what life is all about. Who should you go to? You have questions you ask. And the thought struck me very strong when I looked at my teachers. I had some really strange teachers, but when I look around at the teachers from my little innocent eyes, I saw that nobody knew. What a strange thing. And something said to me, you know more than them. But it wasn't egotistical. It didn't puff up. It didn't puff up. That's strange. How could I know more than them? They're my teachers. I don't know math. I don't know this. I don't know that. You know something? It's true. I know more than them. I always did. I just didn't know I knew it. It just took a little while for me to realize it because I got an inner education. There's an inner teacher. I could be a scientist. I could be a mathematician. I could be anything that I saw I needed to do. What I saw I needed to do was what I'm doing. I didn't read it. I don't read any books. Oh, I'll just read an occasional article that interests me. Someone will bring it to me. But I hate reading because I find myself parroting what someone just said. I like just to inquire, watch, observe. It comes to me. I'll test it. I'll get some resistance, which means what I'm thinking is wrong, but I'll get some resistance, which means what I'm thinking is wrong, but maybe not. Maybe there are people who don't like to hear it. You see, there's the other consideration. I'm analytical without being analytical. Well, bless my soul, it's him. Well, bless my soul, it's him. It's Eddie. How you doing, Eddie? How long haven't I seen you? You flew in from Ireland for this, didn't you? How's the missus? Good. I'll talk to you later on. Give you a big hug later. Oh, we'll you don't want to bring that subject now. We've got neophytes here. I don't want to run them out. We've got new people here. No, I'm not rejecting education, of course not. I understand that. I'm not going to reject education. What I'm looking for, see, I had to survive education because there weren't any good educators. See, there are not many good mothers and fathers. There weren't many. I didn't have I had a decent dad, but I hardly knew him because he was always working during the Depression and all that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean to say there are halfway decent parents and there's halfway decent doctors. And they do have some skills and they have decency to practice those skills within a halfway decent way. But for the most part, the great majority of, and they're not only are they don't do you much good, but they're dangerous. Now that doesn't mean, I'm not trying to dismiss education because I have my own school. I started a school. In Oregon, we have 160 students with 2 acres and classrooms just like anybody else. Hands-on experience. We feel like hands-on. They've all made their own canoes and are going down the Rogue River. By the time I get back, it's going to be a big national event. They've made their own canoes and they're going to go down the Rogue River 60 miles, carrying their canoes where the rapids don't permit them to travel. What an adventure. I'd like to go to a school like that. What an adventure. I'd like to go to a school like that. Because you learn most of everything you do with your hands. 90% you retain what you do with your hands and only 10% what you learn with your brain. I've forgotten everything I learned in school. Everything I learned and I acquired because I was interested in it. And I did it. Learned and I acquired because I was interested in it. And I did it. And so that was my adventure. But I don't want to have my kids sit in front of an impatient bore 6 hours a day, learning nonsense. And if you like, I'll talk about education. How should a person learn? That would be a subject of learning, and a way of learning that people of genius have discovered, but they can't explain it. Of course, with my genius, I can explain everything. And I could reform the educational system in this country. I could reform the prison system. They go out, they go in, and they come out, and they won't come back because I teach them how to deal with the pressures. Simple. You can't punish people into being good. Especially the people who punish are no different from the people that drove them into the jail in the first place. You have total insanity here in this country and America.
I never had any education.
Insanity here in this country and America.
I never had any education. I never had a chance.
Well, but you're not stupid.
I know. I'm interested in Roman stuff, all sorts of things. I'm interested in loads of things. I live on my wits. I live on my wits.
Yeah.
Yeah, no chance. It's another story. But
I noticed a young man.
it's another story. But
I noticed a young man here. How old are you? Can you stomach the things I'm saying? Can you understand what I'm saying? Good.
Would you say that there's any hope for this country? Do you think enough people will wake up, or should one get out of London?
Well, I don't know. You'll have to make your own judgments. I know in America I've advised everybody to get out of the big cities because there's no future. They're all little socialist enclaves. Have corrupted themselves. They've got the kind of government they deserve. See, they're living absurdities because the people in the big city are much more. People in the country are a little wiser and smarter and more independent, self-motivating. They're more philosophically sound in the country. The motives and the pressures in the big city condition them to become dependent on more and more services, provided more and more government, and pretty soon you have a basically communist government in the big cities. It's all going to collapse. It's all going to collapse. It may happen here, I don't know. No. I would? No. So any questions so far? Anyone would like to? Yes. Yeah. Well, see, this is the problem with the educational system is that I do remember a time. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I left England 45 years ago, so 49. So 49. And I do remember in England that was, I don't know, much more dignified than it is now. That doctors looked like doctors and nurses carried themselves as nurses. And there was a sort of respectability about the profession, a kind of good respectability about the profession, a kind of goodness. And policemen were like that too. And they were tall, and you could always tell a bobby because his little head bobbied above the crowd, you know. They were taller than the others, and they were very... It would command respect. It was so much nicer then. And in America was just a beautiful place. Something slowly but surely. And I believe it's a socialist plot, a communist plot. Personally, I really believe that. I may sound like I'm crazy, but I can save my politics for some other time. Yeah, I don't want to bore you with what I know. See, just a little touch of this, you may be involved in the politics of it, and how you get to kind of have the ogres and the idiots that you have running the country. Is that Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov? Do you know who that is? Yeah. Is the dogs in the? Do you know who that is? Yeah. Is the dogs in the big, the conditioning fellow? Well, they've taken those experiments just beyond the conditioned reflex response of ringing a bell and the bell representing food to the dog by association. And the bell representing food to the dog by association. They've taken that to a very fine art of mass mind control, because you need the media to be able to control the masses. So, like Hitler needed the media, he couldn't have done what he did without the media. You'll notice that the media, well, I don't know in England, but I think in America the media is left, dangerously left. And the point of being socialist or communist, and they make lies truth, and truths lies, and they take good people and hold them up to ridicule. And they take a man like Clinton, who 29 people have been murdered around him or died in mysterious ways around him since he was elected, all connected with Whitewater and his election campaign. Every one of them. 12 of his bodyguards have been killed in mysterious accidents. Bodyguards have been killed in mysterious accidents. Take a man like that, they protect him. And so there are homosexuals in Congress, and they hold Barney Frank. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a Congress. He had running a whorehouse male whorehouse with his friend in the basement of his apartment building. All they did was give him a slap on his hand. See, but they take bizarre people who are mentally unsound, morally unsound, the good leaders, and bring them down. That's what happens. It's happening. They understand all these things. What they are underdoing is they're using the principle of the dysfunctional family, because everything that's wrong with the family, if you look at a family and its dysfunctionality, the Adam and Eve syndrome that's going round and round in a circle, the baggage that men and women bring to marriage, if you look at that very carefully, you'll see that schizophrenia, suicide, crime, everything emanates from that family. Now, you could have a scientist that says, now look, let's understand what's wrong with this family, and let's see the underlying principles, let's see what's missing, see if we can put family together and save the family and save the country, because remember, the nuclear family is the basis of what the country is. Everything that the country is, politically speaking, is what the family is. If you have good families, you have, politically speaking, is what the family is. If you have good families, you have good government. If you have sick families, they'll elect the kind of government they deserve, right? But no, now this is what they've understood. They've taken all the dysfunctionality of the family and have carefully analyzed it, and applied it to society at large, to the media. In other words, what you got as a dysfunctional family is, well, you came from a dysfunctional family. You have your rebellion, your conformity. Let me just Brave New World Revisited. And in this book, and I don't have the exact figures, so you'll forgive me if I don't quote the figures exactly, but the point is what's important. The Pavlovian scientists took a prison camp with approximately 2,000 political prisoners and exposed them to their findings about dysfunctional family, and pressure sources, women camp commanders. That's important, like Clinton is appointed all these lesbian, dysfunctional women because they know the effect that it has on men. See? But they have all, the camp commander is a woman, camp commander is the very worst you can have. The camp commander is a woman, camp commander is the very worst you can have. All the men go crazy, see. But because the dysfunctional family comes from the collapse of a father, mother turning the children, the power struggle against the father, subtly. That's what liberals do. They hold up their father to ridicule when the dad's away at work. Comes home, he sees the children don't do what he wants them to do, and he attacks the children, but he really should be attacking the mom. And mom says, "Oh, you poor thing, your father's such a wicked person." Come to mom. She supports their rebellion against their father. And then what you got is children who are now nurtured for their rebellion, for hating their dad. She's now nurturing their little selfish ego side. She's sort of supporting the wrong idea of freedom. Go out and get drunk, do all the things she wants. She'll always support that, and the kids will love to be nurtured and reinforced and validated. So that's the earth nature that needs to be conquered. But Mama knows how. Mama's rooted in the earth. The dysfunctional Mama is rooted in the earth. She wants the power. She's the political force in the home, right? Look at them. Where you go to India, in the home, right? Look at them. Where you go to India, Africa, Israel, you got the willful mom, and the father's a donkey. The children are not disciplined, see? And so what you have is that side of the nature and create irreverence for its leaders, just like that. You do that with your newspapers and your radio and your television. You do it in subtle ways. Always encouraging the worst in people and bashing the male. In America, it's fashionable to bash the white male now. Got him isolated.
Back to this city to be destroyed, gas, city and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but
The trouble is the media, press, TV, radio, they love confusion. They wallow in the confusion.
well, that's power.
They love it. Yeah, it's not there, they didn't invent it.
Correct.
Right?
That's
They
correct.
wallow in it. So
They thrive in where the dead bodies are. There do vultures.
wallow in it. So
They thrive in where the dead bodies are. There do vultures flock.
That's right. You've even got video cameras on his shoulder, it can be instant.
Right.
Instant.
Like to feed your judgments, your angers towards authority, a reverence towards your husband, the male of the species. They encourage the hate of women towards men. Encourage promiscuity. They encourage the hate of women towards men. Encourage promiscuity. Destroying the Judeo-Christian ethic. That's what they're going to do, is hold the family together. Then you can you dismantle society and you create the chaos necessary for socialism and communism. Simple. Yes, sir. Good question. Good question. We got 3 more days to do it this year. I'm just going to, if you will please reserve that question. I know you're dying to know.
I have tried it, but it's very poor, successful.
Well, you just have to have the resolve, a general. And you want to attack another army, you would be very careful about your strategy. You'd have enough guns and airplanes and bombs and machine gun bullets and soldiers, because you don't want to start something and not quite finish the job because he takes you over.
That has happened.
Not quite finish the job because he takes you over.
That has happened.
Yeah, no, that's right. Thank you.
Everything seems to fall, correction falls to judgment.
That's right. And then you end up giving in again.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, I know that.
Your emotion gets in the way.
Once you've created an unreasonable person as a hate object, it's very difficult to break it. See, I started from the very beginning. When I got married 2 weeks later, I said, uh-oh. Now, I've always been the man, and I've always said, no, look, you want to marry me? Fine, you go where I go. Simple. I say, you want to go to a movie? Yeah? Well, let's go see Greatest Story Ever Told. Oh, well, I want to go see this one, so we'll go by yourself. See? Well, she liked that. But anyway, we got married, and then, she reneged on her promise. See, she reneged on her promise. See, there's an old story. Let me tell you the story. There's a story of this frog and the scorpion. And there's a flood, and the scorpion was stranded on this little mound of floating earth. And the floating earth. And the scorpion said, "Oh, Mr. Frog, please let me jump on your back. If you don't let me jump on your back, I'm going to die." And the scorpion says, "No way. I know what scorpions do. You think I'm crazy? Mr. Scorpion, you don't want to let me die? I promise you, this one time I won't sting anybody. I'll be very grateful." So the scorpion, having compassion, he lets the scorpion jump on his back, and halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog, and they both die. And as he's dying, the frog says, "You promised. Why did you promise?" So, see what I'm saying, when you get married, you're the frog. You got to understand that.
No, I understand it. But you did it 2 weeks.
News for you. I've been married 42 years. It's taken me 42 years. I've saved my children from insanity. My daughter said the other night to me, she said, "Dad, if you hadn't been where you were, I would have gone crazy." See? Now, my wife's still with me. She's a little cuckoo. She still has a little cuckoo, but she's much better. Her fangs are now removed. And she's grateful. She is grateful because she could have saw the future, that she's seen the future, what could have been had it not been strong. She appreciates the strength. I was never mean to her, but it looked like meanness. See? But you've got to have the strength to carry it through. You cannot have the strength to carry it through. You cannot give in at any point. I was on the Radio Caroline yesterday visiting, and they did a little interview, and they had some TV and radio coverage locally there in some, is it East Anglia or Sussex, or Essex? Anyway, I admired humble guys there with, sweatshirts and beards, and they look like they come from, from the earth. But they were interesting guys. I was at home with them because after all these years, they still volunteer their time for free. They still, even though they play music on that ship, their idea of freedom is still, they have the tenacity to stay with it. One of them's been with it since he's 27 years old. He's 47 years old now. He's still with it. The ship's tied up in the dock. They can hardly use it. They've made laws, especially focused on Radio Caroline. I used to be on that. Focused on Radio Caroline. I used to be on that, that radio station. And but the point is, what it is, they have the tenacity to stay with it. It may become a radio station one day, It may become, what it should become, very famous. It may become, what it should become, very famous too. When they give it the license, it may become the most famous radio station. But they stayed with it, out to sea with the storms and all of the misadventures, peradventures. One of the ships smashing the equipment, they stayed with it. There's something about, you've got to have a quality that knows what's right and is going to face it to the very end. If you haven't, your children, let me tell you something about psychology, which psychology may not know about, is that if there's any lack of resolve in you, this much lack, you have a nice appearance, you're strong, if you have this tiny weakness, so small, size of a pinhead, your children will scan you and watch your reactions, and that lack of resolve will feed back as encouragement. You're giving the energy to it. The secret is not give the energy. There you are. He hates you. But he hates you, right? No, you don't have the spirit. You can try all you want without the spirit. You see? There's got to be that resolve, that tenacity, that loves what's right, even if your flesh falls off your body, your bones stand there. You ever see that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger? And the iron skeleton keeps on coming at you? That's what you have to have. If you don't have it, they'll have it. So we'll talk. Why don't you come closer? Come a little closer so I can see your face. See your face. And how about you guys in the back coming a little closer? Would it be nice to? Would you mind?
We expected a lot more people, it seems.
Oh yeah, there's some people are coming for 2 days. Some people are coming for there'll be maybe more shit there. Even out, yeah. Well, just let me take the lady, and we'll come to you in a moment. Okay, the lady behind you, then you. I would like to all of you get involved, because don't be afraid to speak to me, because you've got to break that spell. I don't want you to be leave here dumbed down like you did when you came in.
You mentioned homosexuality a minute ago. I know some nuns who really believe sincerely that it's a genetic thing. What would you say to them?
They don't know what they're talking about. And they also...
Not to tell me, I don't know either.
They also don't know the scripture. Nuns should stay out of it. Because they are the nuns, they're Catholic nuns that believe the scripture, or they're not. They should know better.
They might say to you, where the scripture says...
I'll tell you something. You go to the nuns and ask them this question.
Yes?
Miss Nun...
No,
no, that's it.
Yeah.
Say, look, no, that's it.
Yeah.
Say, look, you believe homosexuality is normal? Say yes. So let me ask you a question. If you saw a person eating a hot dog with his nose, would you consider that normal? See if they get the message. And I know what I'm going to tell you. Because you can be convinced of anything.
Yeah, well, they have different ways of interpreting scripture. So what scripture would you tell them?
No, don't bother with them. You know, if you are, if,
that was written a long time ago and all that.
well, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
That's the beauty of it.
yeah. Well, let's say it was written a long time ago.
I don't think they don't understand their own religion. They are being persuaded, slowly becoming dissatisfied with their own religion and becoming persuaded by the world. That's what's happening.
Yeah, very nice to themselves,
Yeah.
very misguided.
Yes, the secular world is creeping into them, and their sense of secular world is creeping into them, and their sense of compassion, the false sense of compassion, is being awakened.
They say I'm judgmental.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you should say, well, I'm judgmental. You think I'm wrong? Maybe you're judgmental. You need to play by your own rules. You can't say I'm wrong without being judgmental, can you? Let me tell you something. You have people in the world, this is what you have to understand this. That liberals, when I say liberals, I mean the left, the ones that are the liberal left, the ones that are all compassionate for all the wrong people. They're from living hell. They come from hell, they do. There's a compassion for everything that's wrong. The devil loves his own, they do. There's a compassion for everything that's wrong. The devil loves his own, you might say. Yes, compassion, love for everybody who's wrong, but people who are right they have no use for. You see? Because their love creates new recruits to their kingdom. New dependents to their government of hell. New dependents to their government of hell on earth, as it is in Hades. Yeah, but the liberal left is a very dangerous group of people, and there's something about these people that they're very difficult to deal with. You're an intelligent lady, reasonable with you. You'd say, yeah, I'll consider that. Or you'd recognize the truth of it right away. Thank you. Never thought of it that way. And it would be a win-win situation. You wouldn't be conquered, you would be enlightened. Right? And I wouldn't have conquered you, right? So that's the purpose of our communing here. The reverse of that doesn't work. There are people who literally from the other side of hell. And you may have had a mother like that or a father like that. You may have brother. You thank God for that. But the thing is, I know he hasn't had parents like that. See? Many of you have seen the face of hell when you've seen how unreasonable they are and you try to reason with them and they can't see it. They think you're nuts. They try to think you're nuts for seeing that they're nuts. And they punish you for seeing the truth about them. Huh? No, these people, all people look alike until you get to know them a little bit. And then your world of innocence, your world of common sense comes into conflict to their confusion. They've been corrupted. And they have a mindset that's different from yours. Not the one they were born with, the one that's been transmogrified. They have a mindset that's different from yours. Not the one they were born with, the one that's been transmogrified. And they have an allegiance to that hell that they're living in. They want to project it onto you. And when you have a little common sense and you try to reason with them, you come into that. And when you come into that and you try to be reasonable with them, they have an advantage you don't have. You have a conscience, and they can make appeals to you, and they may be able to convince you. Because they can sometimes put on a good argument, and you are reasonable enough to want to come across. But those people will not respond to reasonable argument. As a matter of fact, I'm good enough at my work to show them their contradictions. See? But when I show them their contradictions, they can't see the contradictions. See, if you would tell that nun about the hot dog and the nose thing, yeah. I don't want to be indelicate with the nose thing. Yeah. I don't want to be indelicate with the yes. And you see, then you say, well, do you want me to draw a picture for you? See, and they can't hear it. They won't be able to see it. They cannot. They cannot see it. They just.
And I said, people who do that are wicked. The bad love them that.
Well, those kinds of nuns.
Yeah.
those kinds of women, when they're married, produce children that are homosexuals. See, what a homosexual is a man made over in the image of a woman. And those kinds of women love those kinds of men. And those kinds of men are attracted to those kinds of women. See, not all women are alike. There are good ones and bad ones. And so you have sick women. I used to have, I remember in thousands of people I've interviewed and counseled, I had a young lady that she was secretary to a famous film producer, and he died, and she didn't have anything to do with it. She would transcribe some of my radio programs, and I lived for a long time, and I always say thank you, that's very nice. And she didn't look for any monetary consideration. She just did it, and she was very good at it. And one day her daughter came in. She says, "You don't know what my mother's like." I said, "Oh?" She says, "Well, what she does is she looks for all of these stray people off the streets, and the strangest people, she takes them in and she takes care of them, and she tries to, love them and comfort them and bathe them and cook for them and take care of them. But I'm her daughter, and she has no use for me because I'm independent. She loves these. See what she did? She's like a government. She looks for that which is dependent on her, that cry out to her for her godly love, for her godly compassion. She loves it. Even though one of those the child tries to tell the mother, "But look, Mom, I'm your mother, I'm your daughter. You're supposed to look out for me first. Why aren't you looking out for me?" She ignored it. She has no use for the one that's independent, that doesn't need her. She loves to look for those who have needs. And
please write to FHU 27 Old Gloucester Street, London, WC1N 3XX, or email FHU